Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Josh Bodenstadt. I'm in charge of the San Diego office, co-leader of DK's real estate industry group, along with Christy Woods and Thane Kelton, also on this call. We lead the real estate industry group. Within our real estate industry group, we've been very focused on identifying opportunities to help our clients grow and operate more effectively, whether that's developer tax strategies, ownership structure and planning, 1031 exchange strategy. We looked at property tax appeals, and also just upon our other accounting, HR, and IT related services. As part of that evolution, we're now also helping clients think about AI and how to incorporate it effectively into their operations. On behalf of our DK team and our guest speaker, Youell, this is our AI in Practice Intelligent Business Growth presentation, and we're very excited to have Joy present to us today. Joy has been working closely within our team as well, helping us think through how to use AI in the most effective and practical way across our firm and for our clients. Today, it's intended to be a practical business conversation. It's not a technology demonstration. We can do that at a later point in time, right, Joy? Today, we're just going to focus on where AI is creating real value, where caution is still needed, and how leaders can approach adoption in a grounded way. DK, we view AI not as a trend, but as a core capability. It started with our 2026 strategic planning process, where we identified it as a firm-wide priority, something embedded thoughtfully across our workflows, client service, and decision-making to ultimately deliver more insight, more value, and a capacity across our firm. It was a deliberate decision shaped through our leadership and planning discussions where AI consistently emerged as a driver of stronger client experience, better use of data, and more scalable workflows. More importantly, it's just about doing work faster. It's about freeing up time for better advisory, clear insights, and more proactive services. We also see this directly in our real estate industry group. AI is beginning to influence operational intelligence, decision-making, and even the platforms many of our clients already use, such as Yardi and Appfolio. It creates real opportunities for more proactive and informed advisory. Whether it's yourselves, owners, operators, investors, that means AI is no longer just back office. It's becoming part of how decisions are made and how value is created. Our goal today is simple: to make this discussion practical, relevant, and useful, to share what we're seeing, where the opportunities are, and how to move forward thoughtfully. And with all that, I'm going to turn it over to Joy. It's all yours, Joy.
Awesome. Great, Josh. Thanks for that. Good intro. So I'm Joy Youell, like Josh said, and I've been in large language model development and consulting for about 15 years. I was part of a team out of Japan that did a lot of consulting on early LLM models, which is what is the technology behind things like ChatGPT. So I've been in the AI world for a long time, and I think that one of the things that we're seeing now that AI has become more consumer facing is obviously we're starting to get familiar with things like the chatbot interface. And for many of us in business, that's really where it has both started and stopped, is with chatbots. And it's difficult to see value beyond that. And I think that many businesses are left wondering what else is there, and left wondering, how do we see any kind of actual return on this? And the very kind of early days, maybe a year or two ago, right, when we were all kind of being sold a bill of goods that AI was going to make everything more efficient. And that was really the kind of banner cry of all of these different technologies, right? And the reality is there has been like a huge gold rush in AI, and who makes money in a gold rush, right? It's the people who sell the picks and shovels. And so the technologists have been the ones, right, who've been capitalizing on this and have been really trying to ensure that all of us embrace this as much as possible, because we have these huge businesses out there with these hugely inflated valuations who have to make good on the promises to their investors. So I think there's, complex economic realities behind what's happening in artificial intelligence right now. And there are real technological innovations that could shape the future of your business. And the truth is, the toothpaste is out of the tube, right? So anybody who sits back and says, I'm simply going to maintain a massive level of skepticism, or I'm going to reserve judgment, or I'm not going to experiment with AI, will lose. Like, we're too far down this road, right? Regardless of whether the bubble pops and there's a difference in the economic model, regardless of what the actual future applications of this technology look like, I would absolutely encourage everybody to have a healthy level of skepticism. But the truth is, this technology will drive the future of our businesses. It will drive the future of the real estate business. And to not embrace it to some degree is short-sighted. And so I think we have an opportunity, though, to think about it in action. And so I'm what's called an AI operationalization consultant, which is really just a word with a lot of syllables. But the idea is that I don't want to talk about AI theory. And like Josh said, today, the goal is not for me to sit here and lecture you about what AI can do, because that's all we ever hear about is all of these like pie in the sky things that AI can do. And AI can do this massive thing, and AI can change your life, and AI can replace you all, 50% of your employees and all that. Let's not do that. Let's just talk about the real, like, sea we're swimming in, how it actually applies to us, and then the truth about like what is the realistic application of some of these technologies, and then what could we take away from here in terms of like what do we actually need to know? What do we actually need to know? What do we actually need to be putting in practice? What's practical right now? And then what do we need to be preparing ourselves for in the future? And the truth is, I live and eat and breathe this. And so I can offer at least a practical view of like, I know this is what works, and I know this is a waste of your time. So hopefully this is a fruitful time for us to bring our heads together and kind of spend a little bit of time thinking about this in a really practical way. And you'll emerge and absolutely ask questions and pick my brain. I work with a lot of businesses, and we have lots of common questions, frankly, between lots of different kinds of businesses. So ask it, right? If it comes to your mind, ask it, and we'll talk it through. So, like I said, AI is absolutely in the gold rush era. Don't get it twisted, right? The amount of scale up investments that are happening in total in Silicon Valley, and I mean y'all are in California, versus what's happening in Gen AI and other kinds of AI is pretty massive, right? So there's a massive amount of investor confidence. Like, I mean, there's tons of jokes about it. If you follow anything on social media or whatever, like just slap an AI label on it, and all of a sudden investors are like, what? Right? Because there's investors are very interested in AI-ifying everything. And I mean, the reality is like some of us are just sick of hearing about it, but hear about it we must, because it is part of our lives and future, because we're business people. And the reality is, even though there are a lot of startups and scale-ups in the AI space, the big players are still dominating. So they're what are called frontier models, all right? And the big ones are OpenAI, Anthropic, OpenClaw, and then in the hardware space, NVIDIA, right, is really kind of the big leader. And that's just because they dominate the chip market. The data center race has yet to be determined. We'll see, right? If satellites get their way, maybe that will happen. But everyone's kind of, well, y'all are in California right now. There's a lot of conversations happening right now about what the future of data centers will be like. So we'll see what that hardware side ends up being. But I mean, Anthropic's run rate revenue growth is pretty staggering in terms of they're burning cash big time and are projected to continue doing that. OpenAI's valuation is obviously through the roof, which feels a little bit like insane. And if you've been following the news, they did file preliminary papers for IPO 2 weeks ago, maybe, and then filed for privacy. So nobody can really see behind the curtain, but we can make some educated guesses. And the reality is it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. So all that to say, that's the sea we're swimming in. That's why I say a little bit the toothpaste is out of the tube, because the truth is, like, we have to understand that regardless of what we think judiciously about the investments that are being made, they are being made, right? This is where the money is going. And so we have to be thoughtful about the fact that these technologies are being developed, they're being deployed, businesses are buying into them, and a massive amount of generative AI and regular AI experimentation is happening in business contexts. So yes, businesses are buying in. However, and if you pay attention to the news, this is equally the case. We don't know whether it's working, right? Everyone's like spending, it's like cash everywhere. And there doesn't seem to be a great deal of clarity on whether or not it's working. And some of us are like really skeptical that it's working at all, right? There was a study that came out that 96%, 95% of companies aren't seeing an ROI. Now, if you read that study, you can see that that was a little bit of a clickbait title, but that got passed around pretty liberally. Regardless, there's truth to it, right? IBM's 2026 CEO study found that only 25% of AI initiatives delivered an expected ROI over 3 years, that kind of thing. AI ROI, the paradox, right? There's like this idea of the AI race, but beneath the buzz, what's happening, that kind of thing. So there's kind of these competing narratives, which we're all kind of hearing. So it's like, okay, AI is everything, going to take over and it's going to change our lives, and it's a magic solution. And also it doesn't work and nobody knows how to make it work. So we all exist in this kind of what's happening, right, space. I would assume, right, that you live with some level of curiosity as to which of those things is true. And so I would posit, right, this is my hypothesis, is that there's a measurable gap between activity and effectiveness. Right, so there's a measurable gap between activity and effectiveness. You can do a bunch of stuff and it may not be effective. And so what I would say is, in the next however many minutes we have, how do we create some kind of strategy so that in your organization, you're not just doing a bunch of stuff when it comes to artificial intelligence, you're actually being effective. You're choosing the tool, or you're choosing the process, or you're selecting the workflow, or you're getting the use case mapped out for effectiveness as the goal. Not just so that you can say we use AI, not just so that you can be like, we measured it and this many percentage of our people use chatbots. Like, who cares how many percentage of your people do, right? Like, that doesn't mean anything when it comes to effectiveness, right? So we want to end this time with you having at least a few ideas of what could a roadmap towards effectiveness look like, because you would evaluate any tool or investment in your business that way, wouldn't you? Like, anything you're going to invest in, you would be like, is this going to actually further my goals? Is this going to actually make me money? Is this going to actually make us more effective? And so we want to make sure that in the midst of AI being this shiny, exciting thing, we're not falling prey to having no goals. We're not falling prey to having no measurement, and we're not falling prey to just doing it because everybody else is doing it. Not that any of us would do that, but you know. The question is why? Why does that even happen, right? Why do we even have the activity and not the effectiveness? I think there are some real reasons why AI is not effective, okay? And why it hasn't been as effective as it could be, or maybe even not effective at all. So I want you to like put on your self-diagnostic hat, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand and be like, yeah, that's kind of us. But I do want you to think a little bit about like, do any of these reasons resonate with you in your organization when it comes to AI? So reason one that I would say when I go consult that I see happen is that in many instances, self-motivated employees are outpacing organizations in AI adoption and use. So you've got a little group of people in your organization who are passionate, and there's literally a term for it. It's called BYOAI. And I think I can only say it once, because if I try to say it twice, I start stuttering because it's a lot of syllables. But BYOAI, it's bring your own AI. So this was from Microsoft's work survey from 2024. Okay, so this was 2 years ago. So it's not the most current one, but as of 2 years ago, 78% of AI users were bringing their own AI tools to work. Okay, and that was even more common at smaller mid-sized companies. So there's this tension between people who are like excited and ready to roll, and the need for things like governance and systems and infrastructure, and right. And so there's a tension that happens there, and there's a pace of change, there's a pace of adoption, and there can be a real mismatch there. And that can limit AI's effectiveness. And I'm not saying you let those people run roughshod, right? Because obviously you have to have structure and governance and all of that. But that is a huge reason why I see AI being ineffective, is because of the lag between people who are really excited about it and how long it takes the company to catch up. Again, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but just maybe consider if you see that in your own organization. Reason number two is that AI use is not defined. And like literally, okay, I'm going to speak at a conference next week. It's like a $500 million company. Their definition of AI use is how many people log into ChatGPT every week. I was like, guys, that doesn't mean anything. Like, what does that even mean? Like, how in the world can you measure if that affects your business, like in any way? They could literally be asking ChatGPT to go plan their vacation. Like, you're not measuring anything useful for your business, right? You don't know if they're gaining prompting skills. You don't know if they're actually improving. Even if you were sure that they were chatting with the chatbot about business related things, you don't know if they're improving their skills. You only know that they're chatting with the chatbot. They could be just maintaining their skills, right? Like, so the idea that AI use is not defined, nor is its performance. So most AI usage remains concentrated in individual productivity tasks, like drafting content, summarizing information, brainstorming, searching for information, or answering questions. This is like entry level, and it's just chatbots, right? You could almost have done similar things with Google. Very minimal AI engagement. One of McKinsey's recurring findings in some of their AI research has been that organizations often confuse tool access and individual usage with enterprise transformation. These are not the same things. So think about how you measure, if you do, and if it's correlated with effectiveness in any way. Okay, I'm gonna pause there. So basically what we've talked about so far is like state of the union, right? Like here's what the market is. We know the sea we're swimming in. We recognize that there are sizable investments happening here. We also recognize that activity and effectiveness are not the same things. There are multiple reasons why that is the case. We're compelled to engage in AI. There are reasons that we can't, don't, it's not working, all of that. Before we get into kind of the next, where we're going to talk through some practical strategies and things like that, I just want to make sure we have a moment if you have any questions about anything we've talked about so far.
Feel free to turn your mic on and ask the question or put it in the chat. And while you're doing that, Joy, one of the questions that one of our clients submitted in advance of the session today was, how concerned should I be about fraud and hackers getting into our systems? And they asked about, shouldn't there be a firewall between the benefits of AI and our data integrity?
Yeah. So data is the first step in any AI program. You need to have your data structured, organized, safeguarded. But I will say any frontier AI model, and we'll define that in a second. Well, I'll define it right now. Frontier AI models are anything like OpenAI, Anthropic. So any of these organizations, there are security profiles built in. So just like you build a security profile in your Microsoft environment or your Google environment, saying you need a certain level of, file access, a certain level of, read, write, view only, or no view, or whatever, you can set those same security profiles in your model. You also set that, everybody used to be concerned that their like chat usage was going in to train the model. That's rarely the case anymore. The default settings of all of these frontier models do not allow your chat information to train the model. So I think it's pretty rare that you're going to encounter any kind of hackability. It's too big of a risk to these frontier models now. You don't really hear about it. It's pretty much, if they're going to get hacked, it's the models themselves who are going to get hacked. It's not you.
But Joy, you said a good word, right? Access.
Yeah.
And so, because when I look at it, right, from a tech stack standpoint, is AI doesn't really eliminate the need for cybersecurity fundamentals, right? Like in a lot of cases, it's the same governance, it's the same access controls, vendor due diligence, right? That we all do to protect our businesses today. That's going to help protect us in an AI enabled environment.
Have you seen that? It's like it's not what it's a meme, right? Is what it's called on social. And it's like the people who are like dumping like all of my company information into ChatGPT so I can get like one single answer. Like, you have to control on the governance side, like the actual protocol. And then you also have to have like some kind of behavior protocol for your employees to make sure they're not making like foolish decisions about what they're inputting. Because obviously that would be a problem.
Yeah, and you talked about some of the mindsets of some individuals right earlier on the call today, but we shouldn't think about avoiding AI. At least that's my opinion. You have to think about how you use it responsibly.
And kind of a follow-up question to that, Joy, and it relates to, I like this BYO AI. And that can be an issue, right? Because it's happening. We all know it's happening, and having that on the platform of our system where everybody just kind of got their own BYO AI event going on, and the issues there. And you mentioned, yeah, loading up personal data that goes out to web, not just within work.
Yeah.
And all the issues there.
That's absolutely terrifying to me. I can't even imagine. I mean, you think about like a free chat GPT, there is no security in that. That is the model that's being used. Like all the chat information is public. It's being used to train the model. I mean, if you have no, and this is the thing, is where if you have employees who are taking initiative and you're not providing for them, they're going to make those kind of mistakes and they're moving ahead. And it is their fault. They should not do it. It is the wrong thing to do, right? They are breaching security. It is wrong. And they need, it's a weird situation, right? We need to get ahead of it and create the opportunity for them to do the experimentations in a secure environment, to have the governance framework so they know what's right and wrong and why, right? Because there's a lot of people too who make innocent mistakes, who really don't understand the risks of these things. And so just like Tracy said, right, having cybersecurity, I mean, they understand not to respond to a phishing email, right? We need to train them about what not to put in, or what, to make sure you're always logged in to the chat GPT so that you're in the business environment, which inherits the security profiles, instead of in a free environment, or, whatever. They just need education.
Hi, this is Petra. I have a question. How AI works with the role access? When you are in a company, you have access to employees based on their role. So
Sure.
how AI works with this kind of assignments?
Yeah, it depends on the level. So I would say and it depends on the model too. So Microsoft with Copilot, if you have the, I guess, 365 or higher, you can set different role-based access. With Claude, if you have teams or higher, you can set member, director, or admin level access, which gives them like view or edit access to projects, artifacts, or Claude code. And then in ChatGPT, if you have business, Tracy, I'm not sure which can you toggle profile security profiles in business, or is it only in enterprise?
I think it's enterprise.
Yeah, I think in ChatGPT you might have to have the enterprise account in order to give role-based access. But you can give, I mean, enterprise ChatGPT is vast, and you can do a ton of customization. So every model is a little bit different, but they do all have pretty extensive ability to set different kinds of accounts and different kinds of access.
That's a great question though, Petra. So post our discussions today, right, we'll summarize that and get that out to everybody.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions?
We'll stop again for questions too. So I just want to make sure we have like some strategic intervals. Awesome. All right, well, I'm going to dive in a little bit now to real estate specifics. Like Josh said at the beginning, he and Christy and Thane really lead out at Duffy Kruspodin, working with real estate investors, thinking about innovative approaches to grow their businesses. And AI has encroached in the real estate space in some pretty profound ways. Commercial real estate investors are always looking for good technology, right? Obviously, to vet opportunities, to get faster to decisions, all that kind of thing. And this is kind of just an example of things that are becoming more and more AI enabled. if you use Yardi, Virtuoso AI is insane. So, I mean, if you've explored it at all, they have an entire agentic suite now that you can look into, and it can do all kinds of AI capabilities and things like that. Appfolio has Realm AI, which also has a whole agentic suite that can be incorporated. One of the things that I would absolutely urge everybody is do not go find new systems for AI. Like you have food at home. Like you have dinner in the fridge. Like go look at your current tech stack and be like, we probably have there are probably my current technology providers are probably developing AI capabilities, right? You already pay for it. So you should probably think about mining your current tech stack and getting in touch with your representatives or your, account managers and things like that. And like, look at what you already have, what you're already paying for, and consider that, because it's already going to be integrated. And having an add-on with a company that you already trust, they have a lot more to lose if their product doesn't work, right? So they have a little more skin in the game. There's a lot of businesses out there and like startups out there that are building AI products, and they're vibe coding them from scratch in 48 hours and then throwing up a website, and they look really professional and they can do sales calls. And so you have to be really careful. Like there's a lot of people selling AI technology out there today and making a lot of promises. And so it's a lot better to go with a vetted, known entity. So I would say, yeah, it's look at your AI, look at what you already have in your tech stack, figure out how you kind of maybe leverage that and expand what you already have so that you can, obviously reduce your net new investment, and then consider obviously adding to it if you feel like there's a capability that you just don't have that you really need or would want, things like that. Does everybody understand that you have dinner at home thing? Like when your mom, like when you want to go out to dinner, when you're like a kid and you're like, can we go out to dinner? And your mom's like, we have food at home. Is it just me? It's like a Southern thing.
No, it's good.
Thank you for the validation, Christy.
Yes. No, I think maybe, and I don't know if this is the right time to talk about it, but I think something that we've found, just because I think the accounting world maybe lags a little farther behind when it comes to software options, is the ability to maybe add on dessert, right? So you have your dinner at home, but maybe you can go out and grab ice cream. So can you maybe just also touch on the ability to layer maybe other AI on top of something that's already integrated in the software? And then we've experienced just as a firm that sometimes there are hidden costs there and having to pay for certain technology add-ons with the APIs and the ability to access the data. Just as people start to go down this path, you can definitely build upon it, but there's some things to watch out for too.
No, that's absolutely true. And we'll talk in a minute about build versus buy, because one of the big unknowns kind of in the future of AI technology is a big question mark around token cost, right? It's part of why the question mark around data centers is so important and relevant for us, even if we feel a little bit distant from it, because tokenization and computing power is such a big part of AI functioning. And so there is a big question mark around that, like Christy said. API calls are expensive. And so if you're trying to integrate two software systems, every time data flows between those two things, that can cost money, right? The amount of time AI is running costs money because you're paying tokens for it, and those cost money, and things like that. So yes, I think that there needs to be a lot of times deeper analysis around what your core tech stack does, and then what add-ons do. And I also think that many times what you want to do, if you're looking at, you usually get into an exploration about capabilities through the conversation about AI. And when you explore the workflow that you're wanting to accelerate or augment or whatever, I often find people are actually just wanting automation. They don't actually want AI or need AI. It's just an automation that they want to create. and might have a thin intelligence layer to do some kind of data mapping or something like that. But I'm a big fan of like, for as much as possible, build traditional technology and then put the thinnest possible layer of AI on top of it, again, because the future cost is so unknown. If you get into a very deep, complex, very AI reliant system, you could be really thrown for a loop in the future if things change. So I think that there's a lot of balance to be achieved when it comes to making these kind of technology decisions. Is that fair, Christy?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Of course. And we'll talk more about buy versus build in a minute. So in real estate, like we said, AI is creating value in a lot of places. Document heavy workflows are among the highest return AI use cases. This is why law, it's so good in legal professions as well. So when it comes to just, you've got a lot of data that you've got to sort through, you've got to logic through, you've got to map all of that. Real estate's a good candidate for it. And that's part of why it's become kind of popular. So these are kind of the categories. I would say leasing, accounting, asset management, and then in operations. And these are probably the categories that are having more kind of tailored solutions built out. So these are kind of the current tools I listed out that are probably the most popular for those different categories, but there are going to be more that come to the market, obviously, over time. So you'll just kind of have to keep your eye on it and see what comes to market and what you feel good about and, gain confidence in. And real estate specifically has been positioned kind of for early AI disruption. So there are kind of three overlapping reasons. And that's because real estate, it kind of has these like three disciplines, right, that are incorporated. So you've got the financial components of it, the operational components of it, but then knowledge work. So knowledge workers are the ones that you always hear about in the news that like, are knowledge workers still going to exist? All right, is AI going to replace knowledge workers? There's a real strong component of knowledge work when it comes to real estate, right? You have to read, you have to analyze, you have to make decisions. AI is really good at supporting that. But then you've got those other two components. And so the synchronicity of those three things is something that AI can have a real profound impact on. And so those categories are a real powerful kind of reason why AI can fit really well in this industry. So Anthropic's economic index, found that AI adoption concentrated in those four areas specifically, and those are kind of the four biggest areas. And obviously you can see those map really well to the functions in the real estate industry. And then I want to just emphasize this. So I think that there's an understanding or thought out there that we need to find the best system. We need to find the right, which model are we going to use? Are we going to use Claude? Are we going to use ChatGPT? Are we going to use Copilot? Like, if we find the right system, we're going to have really good AI. I don't think that's true at all. First of all LLMs are pretty much created equally. I know, right? I've been part of this for a long time. Like they're all pretty much the same. They're all pretty much functioning from the same rules, the same logic. They're applied a little bit differently. They're spun up a little bit differently, but the bulk of it is pretty similar. What's going to really affect the future for your organization is how you use it, how AI is put into action. And so I think it's important to think about not just whether your business is going to use AI, but what the real plan is. So we talked about that at the beginning of like, part of the reason people aren't effective is like, they don't know what effective looks like. Like, what would it actually look like for AI to make a difference? So I was on a consulting call a few weeks ago and this blew my mind. I asked somebody, I was like, and this was, I think I was the CEO, COO, CFO, I think. And I asked, okay, what in 5 years, what does an AI forward organization look like? Like, what does that look like in your organization? And they were like, oh, well, in 5 years, we'll already be AI centric. I was like, oh, okay, but like, what does that look like? And they were like, well, it looks like we're going to be 100% AI usage. We're going to be this and that. I mean, all they spoke in was platitudes and theory. And I was like, okay, but like, what impact? What, like, they couldn't give me anything tangible. And I was like, I'm scared. I'm like, okay, so let's start there with like defining that, because if you don't have a goal, how do you know you're getting anywhere, right? How do you know what forward motion looks like? You don't know that you're any closer to it or further away from it, you're just floating in space. Right? So it's super important to have that really defined and understand what's the objective of using these tools. Then you're going to pick the tools, then you're going to develop the skills, and you're going to, move forward with purpose instead of random acts of AI. The Wharton 2025 AI adoption report was really interesting. So, AI is this really unique thing, right? It's not technology, which is part of why we talk about theory so much, because AI is applied in and through technology. That's how we access it. But artificial intelligence is just a set of rules, right? Like, it's not actually technology itself. It's just we put it into technology, chatbots or, whatever, algorithms, things like that. So it's a little bit unique in that way. But we found that technologists are not actually the ones who make or break AI adoption. It's leaders. So you can have the best tech team in the world who's like, we're going to be all about AI. We're going to get AI rolling. We're going to get everybody co-pilot. We're going to get it all. But if your leaders aren't using AI, research says your people won't. And so that's key. Is that we have to be the first out of the gate, be the ones who are willing to adopt it, and then our people will follow. All right, let's pause there for a second, see if we have any other questions, and then we'll move on to a little bit more nitty-gritty with tool selection, and then we're going to look at skills, governance, and then we'll have a little discussion.
Joy, you said, you were blown away when you got on that call, platitudes and theories. We recently attended a real estate conference. We talk to clients every day, not just in real estate, across all industries. And to be fair, that's not unusual. There's this, I'm thinking you're finding the same thing. There's a lot of talk about it, but when you walk away from, say, one of the AI classes, the speakers, I'm like, but what are they really doing? Like, what could I take from that? So it still seems to be theory and platitudes for the most part.
Mm-hmm. It's alarming. Because of the amount of investment that's happening in this space. Like, would we let anything else get away with having such murky return?
Right. Well, do you think part of it is because there's kind of some, I would call, boring stuff to start with. It's not all bells and whistles. You have to put a plan in place. You have to, put guidelines in place. Then you have to educate, and everybody loves to educate. Then you have to find out who's bought in and who isn't. And that's all just normal leadership stuff. And then part of the AI gets in there.
That's such a good point. Yes,
Joy,
go ahead.
I was going to say, you're just talking, you talked a little bit about technology, and it's leaders, right, versus that. And so for me, and just in the industry in general, right, with AI, that's a big misconception, right, is that people, individuals, businesses, they treat it just like technology, but it's more than that. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's really challenging to nail down because this is a horse of a different color. Like, you always hear it likened to like the Industrial Revolution, right? Like, this is the next industrial, or is this like Web 4.0, or is this like the metaverse, or like AGI? Like, there's all these different, we try to use a lot of metaphors for it because it's hard to wrap our heads around what this is. And so I think that when I look at what AI does to an organization, I think its impact is so substantial because not only are there, the nature of your job, the nature of your people's jobs change, right? So there's workforce impacts, there's productivity impacts, there's knowledge work impacts, there's also culture impacts. I think there's like psychosocial components to using artificial intelligence. So what happens when your people start to go to their chatbot instead of their peers for advice? Like, there's interesting dynamics like that impact a lot more broadly the way that things occur. And then workforce development. So you think that, largely the swath of the workforce that AI replaces is that entry-level workforce, right? So you've got kind of the simple early stage individuals who are coming in, and AI is pretty capable right now of doing their job, right? Especially knowledge workers. And so what happens if you replace them for a temporary relief, right? Revenue, headcount and salary and all that. Not that I don't know that any of us think that's a good idea, but what happens when organizations do that? Then what happens to the career pipeline? Like, how else do those people get the 2 to 5 years of early career experience? Like, what are we doing to the broader workforce when that happens? And large tech companies are doing that, right? So there's so many impacts that are occurring because this long-term reliance on chatbots can have, cognitive impacts, right? You can cognitively offload to chatbots. You can, there's so many dynamics to it that are not analogous to a printing press or a machine in a factory or a personal computer. That was a bit dystopian. I didn't mean for it to be. I'm generally pro AI.
No, but it's all relevant, right, to the conversation. So
Yeah.
I'd just like to add on that, Joy, because it is that revolution. It's kind of back in 1918, around that time frame, where our firm DK, we're saying that, okay, everybody else is going paperless. We should put this in our strategic plan to go paperless. So then we became paperless, and then in 2020, we're forced with working from home. There was a shutdown, and we were already set up for success because of that. Here comes a lot of noise around AI, because it is just a lot of noise, right? It's starting to definitely pick up momentum, but it's really accelerated going up, and so it's still in its infancy right now. And so you mentioned chatbots, and that's I think how it's being used the most. But as we're learning from what you're equipping us with, is getting into more of agents and doing this where we can do more analytics around the data that we have. And I think as it relates to, like, for example, a real estate company, and you spoke about Yardi and Appfolio and all the data, not just within their systems, but across their whole infrastructure, the data that can be scanned in a really efficient way to give results and planning for a company on how to be successful, right? And so, like, how does, like, you mentioned data governance a little bit, but can you just kind of again speak to that around? And I think you may speak to that in further slides. Are you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
yeah, we'll talk about governance a little bit more. But no, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that no company realizes how disorganized their data is until they try to automate something. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we name everything something different, or everything is a little bit off. And so, yeah, I think that data organization, having classifications of your data to have different security profiles based on the class of data, all of that is essential groundwork for any kind of AI. But that's what AI is great at, right? AI is great at pattern recognition. It's great at matching. It's great at anomaly detection. It's great at all of that. And so, you can put in, like, I have I'm the CEO of my company. Like, I have an agent that's basically a mini Joy. It's a digital twin of me, and I can put in my monthly everything, right? It just all feeds into it, and then just basically give me a temp check of my company, right? Who are the people I need to check on? Who are the clients I need to check on? Where's the revenue leak? Where am I not as profitable? Like, it gives me everything, right? It gives me a 365-degree view of my 360-degree view. I'm surrounded by accountants. But anyway, I'm not a math person. So, but my agent is. So it can give me this, like, holistic picture of everything that's going on in my organization, but all my data is organized, streaming perfectly into that. So once you have all the data, just hooking it in, setting up the rules, that's honestly kind of the easy part. But yes, you have to have rules. Otherwise, it's a little bit the Wild West. All right. Well, speaking of rules, let's get into the AI tool selection tips a little bit, because I think that most of us are at the point where we're hearing what's going on out in the marketplace, and the next step obviously is what can we use? Right, what can we use to make these things happen to us? My team has like a whole Slack channel dedicated to like ridiculous AI claims because like these companies will literally like, here's one sentence and then you can build an agent. Like as somebody who builds AI agents, that's hilarious. That's not how it works, and that doesn't work. Just in case you thought that, that's not how it works. So it's important when you go to select tools that you have a little bit better understanding. I alluded to this before, but I just want to arm you with a little bit of language. It helps when you're out there in the marketplace, like hearing people's pitches to know what they're talking about and the language that they're using. So frontier models versus purpose-built AI. So the frontier models are everything that is like out of the box solutions, consumer facing. So ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, those are great, right? They're useful for everybody. In order for you to use them well, so like at Duffy Kruspodin, in order for Duffy Kruspodin to use them well, you have to have a pretty high account and you have to customize them, right? So ChatGPT, you can build agents in ChatGPT. Copilot, you can build projects. Copilot Studio, you can build agents. Like the breadth of knowledge these frontier models have is both its advantage and its kind of disadvantage, right? Because every time you go to chat with just a chatbot, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, it knows everything about everything, which is not the person you want to get advice from, right? You want a specialist. So in the world of AI, those are called context windows, and you want the narrowest context window possible. So with a frontier model, they're useful to a point, but you really have to calibrate them for you to be useful for your business. So that's that. The contrast is purpose-built tools. And so that's where you have the tools that are being built by custom software for a specific industry. Things like your Yardi, your AppFolio, Realm, Juniper, CoStar, et cetera. So those are industry specific that are usually built with the protocol, the compliance requirements, the data security requirements, all of that are unique to an industry. And so those are best for usually the things that you're going to want to do that are more, if you have client specific information that you want to put in, PII, anything that you're going to have, contracts, things like that you need to have certain security handling for. Those bespoke tools are probably going to be your better bet unless you have a high enough level frontier model that you can customize the treatment of what goes into it. That said, most AI products are built on top of the large language models. So they're built on top of OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Microsoft anyway, right? Nobody's going to go build an LLM. That's probably never going to happen again because there's so much information and intelligence now. The compounding effect has made it to where nobody could ever build an LLM that could compete with the frontier models. So that's just a little bit of a like TLDR. As you go to the market, that's what you're looking for. Let's talk a little about the build versus buy challenge, because I'm not kidding, and you've probably seen it. All of the marketing is out there that's telling you, buy this software and you can write a sentence in and build an agent that can automate your entire organization. Please, let me myth bust that for you. That is not real. But there are occasions in which you might want to build your own thing, right? Maybe you have a really skilled vibe coder. Maybe you have really good software engineers. Cool. That may be the case. But weigh the pros and cons of that, okay? So buying, the advantages are obviously you get there faster, upfront is not as hard, you get vendor support, you have proven workflows. Like I said earlier, like if you're buying from an established vendor, they have a lot of skin in the game, right? Like that they're buying something other people are using. And so you've got other people asking for improvements and new patches and fixes and all that kind of thing. But you don't get as much customization. You are dependent on that vendor. The roadmap of what they develop is controlled by them, and the costs could go up. So we talked about it already, that the token cost is a little unpredictable. We don't know where the cost of using some of these AI systems will pan out. As these core software systems you use continue to add AI, they're going to have to pay that cost. They're not going to absorb that cost, right? They're going to pass it on to you. So the cost of what you pay for your software could go up substantially in the next couple or 3 years, depending on how quickly data centers can get built to accommodate more computing power that's going to be required by the increasing usage of AI. Okay. Again, we don't know. Then you have the option to build. So say, I want to buy it, I want to build it. The advantages of building is that you have full control over it, right? You could be competitive differentiation. So let's say you own a bunch of apartment complexes, you want to build your own kind of management app, whatever. It integrates with all your systems. You can own the workflow, but it's obviously a higher investment, longer implementation time. You've got to really know what you're doing, right? Because again, AI can make it like, go vibe code this app. And then I will tell you, vibe coding the app takes 2 hours. Troubleshooting the app takes 20. Okay, so like, don't get it twisted. Like, there is still a lengthy process to actually getting whatever you build off the ground and usable. So it's not a mistake to buy, but it is a mistake to buy before you've documented the process. So like Christy alluded to, sometimes we go into these vendor conversations, they don't ask enough questions. We get the onboarding, we get started, and all of a sudden the cost, oh, well, to actually do that, you've got to buy this module too. Oh, to actually do that, you've got to upgrade to this. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, this costs 3 times as much as I thought it would, or whatever. So you've got to really know what you're supposed to be asking, what you want systems to be able to do for you, which is unfortunate because, I mean, you're a business person or a realtor or a real estate investor, or like, why do we have to be good at this? I don't know. This is the world we live in now, unfortunately. And so to be a business person, you have to know enough, at least to vet technology. And that just seems to be kind of table stakes now for succeeding. I get it. I can't even turn on the upstairs TV, but we got to do it. So we got to learn enough to be able to be like, I don't think that's going to work for me. So understanding what you need it to do, and then making those kind of decisions. And then I would just say this, like, I have certain people in my client bench who will like email me every single week and be like, CEOs or whatever, and be like, should we use this? Should we use that? I heard about this. Somebody on the golf course told me about that. And I want to be like, please stop. Like, I want to like call everybody they've ever met and be like, don't tell him about anything. Like, because he gets so excited about every little soft like AI system that he hears about and thinks that it's going to be the most amazing thing since sliced bread. And I'm like, oh. And that's cool to be excited and to explore new ideas. But like Tracy has a really good method. Like, she has a list, she goes through the list, she like explores the software systems, and then she'll be like, this is a good one, this is a bad one. Very methodical. Do that instead. Are you, Trace?
Very methodical, but it's worked so far. So
right. You do the due diligence.
yeah.
So yes. So before you buy any AI tool, like, these are the 6 questions. Okay. And you'll get these slides afterwards because like super important. Please, 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 like, take this and like put it in your own notes app or something. What problem are you solving? How are you doing it right now? Okay, you're not solving a new problem. That's the other thing, is like a lot of people are buying AI systems to solve a problem they don't actually have. You're like, oh, we could do this thing. Oh, do you need to do that thing faster? Like, or are you, and do it faster so that you can do what else? Nobody defines that either. Okay, so if you save 10 hours a week, what are you going to do with those 10 hours a week? Like, that needs to be defined, right? So make sure that you have a problem, that you know what that problem is, it's defined, that you are defining how you're currently doing it. Because again, you won't know how the software can solve your problem if you don't have that mapped out. What metric does it improve? Okay, we talked about that at the very beginning. Like, if you don't actually have the end in mind, you can't then say how effective it's being. You're just being active. You're not being effective. So is it time? Is it cost? Is it accuracy? Client experience? Like, what is it? What is the metric that this would improve? And then what data does it require? Because we go into a lot of systems and we'll be asked to build agents for something. And a lot of other consultants would just go in and be like, sure, sign the retainer. I'm like, wait, let me see your data. Because it's going to be 6 months before I can build this for you. Because we're going to have to go clean all of these things up, right? So making sure that you understand what data is going to require, that you have that data, that you have access to that data, all that. What happens if the vendor disappears? Right? Do you have somebody on your team who's going to be able to understand this system well enough? Because that's the other thing, is a lot of AI people out there will throw a lot of verbiage and like vernacular at you. And it's really, really important that you can understand how it works and that y'all can own it. And then who does own it? Who owns the success of it at the end of the day? Okay. Making sure you can answer those questions before you actually buy any AI tools. Any questions about any of that? All right, good. All right, let's move on to AI skills. So I think that how you pick the tools is really important. And that's going to be something that as a leader, you're always going to be faced with, right? Just trying to figure out what we use. But the other side of it that I think is equally important is figuring out what you can actually do. So what can you do? What are you getting better at? Like, what are the actual skills that are related to or relevant for AI? And a lot of us are dealing with this in hiring right now. If you're hiring for a role and you're like, we want to be an AI forward company, and you start like appending AI skills to certain jobs, and like, it's really hard to define, first of all. And it's also really hard to judge. Like, how do you judge whether or not somebody's good at AI? Like, do you just stick them in front of a chatbot in front of you, right? Like, this becomes tricky, right? It's hard to define. And so I think it's an important thing for us all to start defining for ourselves and figuring out how we're like, what are the skills that make us good at this? And then how are we improving, right? How are we developing those? So first, the skill is not the tool. So the chatbot is not the tool. The tools will keep changing. The tools are going to evolve over time. You hear about it every week, right? Every single week. It feels like there's something else. There's a new model, there's a new process, there's a new something. The tools are going to keep changing, but the core skills will not. And so I think there's really 3 skills that you need to evaluate for yourself and consider. Am I good at this? Can I create some kind of practice in my work life to get better at this? And the same for your people, right? If you're going to be good at AI, which is a very broad phrase, okay? These are kind of the 3 things that I would say are like generically, you have to be good at this first. And so the first is prompting. Okay, so prompting is just what you put in a chatbot, and that's essentially knowing how to give AI the right role, context, task, constraints, output format, all that. And then the second is agentic thinking. So you've probably heard of agentic AI. It's when AI does things instead of just talking to you. But that's essentially understanding how AI can sequence steps toward a goal, not just answer a question. And then the third is workflow design. So understanding how you design entire workflows that lead to automation. And those really are the 3 core components of somebody who is able to put AI in action. The other thing I would say, if you were to evaluate and say, okay, yeah, I have those three skills and some degree of, maturity or whatever, then I would say this is kind of the next thing, right? You start looking at stop thinking in tasks and start thinking in chains, right? So the individual activities of a chatbot, you want to start thinking in like sequences that AI does one thing and then it does the next thing and then it does the next thing, and just try to start thinking about using AI in processes as opposed to just a single setting or a single use case. And part of that being able to define those kind of things is that until you've got the data organized and you've got the process, the workflow, whatever defined, you won't be able to automate anything, right? You won't be able to put AI in action because you have to have those elements in place. So thinking about your processes, like if you say, I want to automate the way we do emails, or I want to automate, I want to add AI to our workflows, I want to add AI to this, that, or the other, you need to be able to first evaluate how that thing currently works, how that workflow is currently functioning in order to understand if you can use AI in that context at all. All right. The last thing we're going to cover before we kind of get to just an open discussion is governance and security. So it's the most exciting part, obviously. Who doesn't want to talk about this? Governance is so important. There are really kind of 4 components of governance. A governance policy should be the very first thing that you've ever done when you talk about AI. If you do not have a governance policy for your organization, you need one immediately. Use AI to help you build one. This is deeply, deeply important. And there's really kind of 4 components, right? Like I said. So first is, what tools are people allowed to use? What are they not allowed to use? What data can they share with that tool or not? Right. So inclusion restriction. And then who's accountable? So who owns the AI strategy, the AI tools, who approves use cases, who's managing the risk, that kind of thing. And then what are the rules? And you need to think about where in somebody's work life, right now you need to roll it out to everybody who currently works for you, right? And then you need to think about where it gets integrated into the workflow moving forward, right? At hiring, as part of the manual, and that kind of thing. So this is really important. Your people are probably not trying to hurt you when it comes to AI, but if you don't have governance in place, you won't be able to enforce any kind of standards. All right. We could talk a lot more about that, but I kind of feel like it's self-explanatory. Any questions about governance? And then we'll just get into some discussion. All right. Well, I want to open the floor to kind of talk through if we have questions, and then also from the DK team, we've worked through over the past year, really putting governance into place, putting an AI playbook together. We have an AI committee. I work in an AI advisory capacity for the organization. There's a lot of effort that has gone into understanding how AI is going to be thoughtfully implemented at Duffy Kruspodin. We have monthly webinars for every training webinars for every single person in the organization. We have a whole learning management system, and every single person has access to it with ongoing AI training. So a significant amount of investment has gone into how Duffy Kruspodin is handling AI, which I think is incredible and obviously way ahead of most other organizations. So I think there's a lot of good things to kind of discuss. And so I want to tap into everybody's brain and let us all kind of answer questions and dialogue about those processes, that setup, and that.
I'll just say thanks, Joy, for that. Going through this entire presentation, I just always kind of going to come back to, you mentioned the revolution. I was thinking the evolution is definitely a revolution, right? It's still in the early stages. And given that it is, we just don't really know. Like I said, we're using it primarily users for just chat bots, but it's a lot more powerful than that. And knowing that, the BYO AI and understanding that side of it, and how our organizations, every company out there, there is risk for that, and bringing it back to the governance side, and how it's being monitored within the organization is very important. And so we've gone through that process. For those on this call that don't know that, but we have, and it's critical for the company to do this, to know what we're using, and to know that other people know their limits and what they can use with it. I think that's critical, because it can really expose an organization and bring in the risk. So that right there is, if there's a takeaway here, it's that it's the governance side, getting it within the organization, looking at how it can be and should not be used within the company. Because a lot of data we have is very sensitive and confidential, should be secure.
Well
And
said.
just know that across all our industry groups, real estate here today, but across all our groups, we have our ear to the ground on this. We're going to seminars, we're learning about this, and we're approaching it in a way that we're learning about it. How can this help our clients? And we're having conversations with our clients about where they're at. So you can view us as a partner like this. We're looking for that, and we'll bring you those ideas. We'll brainstorm with you about what you want to do, where you want to go. We have a lot of resources available to do that. So just keep that in mind. You're not going solo on this.
Yeah, Thane, thanks for bringing that up. I think you mentioned earlier too that we were at a real estate conference recently. And one of the things that was insightful and a good takeaway, I think, is just that there are a lot of vendors out there that are leveraging off of AI themselves. So, Joy, maybe are there some tips or things to keep front of mind when you're working with somebody? And just like, we are using AI, right? So just some good questions to ask. In particular, this was a panel on insurance, and they were talking about the fact that, as an insurance broker, they're using AI to make sure that the applications are filled out. So when they go to bid the insurance quote, they get better results for their clients.
Yeah, I think use case is really helpful. So if, one of the things that you will get surprised by when you go in with a technology provider is if you are introducing a use case they haven't done before, you're going to end up having to pay for customization. So early on in the process of evaluating a vendor, if you can ask specifically about the use cases in which you intend to use their technology, that can be immensely helpful because you can understand if they already have tailored their technology to that use case. Because to Christy's point earlier, it may be that you need to connect with another technology provider in order to get the data stream, right? To achieve an automation or something like that. Maybe they can't do that. You need to know that really early on in the process. And so it stinks because you have to do a little bit more of like the work yourself to map out what you hope to accomplish with the technology. And it's rare that a vendor is going to be able to provide that kind of intelligence to you unless they spend a great deal of time with you to understand how your organization works, how your tech stack works, all the integration points, and all of that. So it's usually something that your team is going to have to kind of establish early on and then present to the vendor to establish whether or not they can accomplish what you're asking to do, because they'll say yes. And then later on, you'll be like, oh, maybe they can't.
Thank you.
You know what's interesting about all of this, and when you talked about the buy versus build, and a little bit about what you just talked about, is I worked in the software industry for a long time, and the use case piece today, and with AI, it just introduces another option, right? Where over the past number of years, we would go to the technology platform first, right? And look for that tool or that solution. But now you kind of have to take a step back and look at the business process, the use case, and you have an option. And Joy summed it up under buy versus build. And so whether it's that complicated or not, for me, it's a new enabler. It's a new option that you have to start thinking about that we didn't 5 years ago.
That's so
Daisy,
true.
did you have a question?
Yeah, no, I'd just like to add a comment. I think it's important as like business owners and decision makers for an organization, what's coming at us on this AI front. There's a lot to consider, and as Joy went through, from like the technical aspect of your tech stack to what you need, whether to buy or to build. But I think one of the things that we're learning through our program that we implement at the firm is that really it's a cultural shift of the people. So I think that's one thing that we cannot lose sight about, how our people are feeling, who our teams that's working on this, and how are we training and pulling them along? Because leaders, we look ahead, but in this instance, we have to look at a little bit, turn around, look at our people and see what support they need to come along this journey with us. So I just want to add that as just a perspective.
That's such a good reminder. Yeah, it absolutely is. And people can get very scared. They can get very threatened. I mean, there's so many headlines about AI replacing jobs and AI causing layoffs. And the reality is, I think AI is a very handy scapegoat. I don't think that AI is usually the actual reason that layoffs are happening. I think overhiring happened during COVID and blah, blah, blah. But regardless, I think that those headlines exist. And so people then hear that large scale AI initiatives are going to happen and they get very concerned about their job, about their future. And so it's important for us as leaders to acquaint ourselves with the realities and the studies out there that AI is not replacing headcount largely. That's just, it's not happening effectively. It's not usually cheaper than human labor. It has other uses, other roles, other, other ways of being effective in our organizations. And we can absolutely be proactively communicative in a way that ensures that our people feel valued and honored and cared for.
Yeah. And enjoy, it's very interesting as we're going through this journey. Usually when you incorporate a change of some kind in an organization, there's a specific group that may feel a little threatened about the job replacement and have a pushback. This one, because the way it's coming at us, and I think because of nature, what it is, there's actually the younger generation that are newer in the profession, at least in my industry, where they have the most resistant, because I think they felt like they are the most at risk. So it's actually a pretty unique phenomenon that is not usual when you come across a change in an organization. But so it's very interesting. But I think you're right in terms of communication is very important in a process like this.
Agreed.
So I'm going to bring up another question that one of our clients submitted before the session, because I want to make sure that we discuss it in our last 18 minutes. And the question was, which I'm going to answer with the question actually, but to you, Joy, what are the biggest benefits to implementing AI in our business? And so for me, I think the better question is, and you already talked about this, right? What business problem are we trying to solve? But anyways, what are the biggest benefits for implementing AI? How would you answer that question?
I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, what does success look like for your business? I think that the idea that AI is going to have a singular positive effect is problematic, right? Again, AI is not going to come in and solve a problem you don't have. You need to think about the problems you already have and then consider how AI can support solutions, or how AI can accelerate growth, how AI can improve things, right? And so I think that there are all kinds of ways that AI can ultimately help your business grow. I mean, in my company, for instance, we all took the 3 things that we hated doing the most, right? For me, it was checking my email. I hate checking my email. So I no longer check my email because I built an agent that checks my email for me. It summarizes whatever I need to read, right? It has all the rules, blah, blah, blah. And then every morning it says, "Morning, Joy. Here's what you need to think about today," right? And it just presents it to me as like a little summary instead of whatever. And then through the day, if there's stuff I need to know, it's reading my email all day long and then it delivers those things to me. So that's great. That improved my company because everybody was able to go build an agent that replaced the 3 things that they hated doing. So that was great. So then they replaced it with doing something that was more business development oriented or more productive, or, that kind of thing. So I think that you have to think about that was very operational. Think about if it's in the profession, if it's more, skill related, all of that. You need to identify what you're hoping to achieve and then really consider what could be improved. And then consider if AI is the right solution. Don't assume that it is, because it might not be, but it could be.
Yeah, I like that, Joy. We read a book called The AI-Driven Leader for our leadership summit last fall. And I think that it was really clear in that one of the quotes maybe that he had is that AI is not the strategy itself, it's serving business strategy, right? So it's a strategic partner when it comes to making business decisions maybe more quickly and helping you. But what the outcomes might be. You're challenging your thinking, but it's certainly not just going to be doing it all for you, right? Unless there's specific tasks, like you mentioned, that you can identify and then free yourself up to be able to do other things that make more sense for the business.
And that's where training comes in handy too. I mean, we create agents that actually train people how to do certain kinds of skills. And part of creating customizing chatbots is training out the agreeableness because chatbots are so inclined and predisposed to agree with you. So we create contrarian chatbots. So for instance, my Claude disagrees with me about everything, and it makes me mad, but but I've programmed it to do that, right? Because I want it to challenge my thinking on everything. So it's programmed to disagree with me. So everything I say, it'll be like, I'm not sure that's the right idea. So it's figuring out how to calibrate as you improve in your AI literacy and understanding how these systems work. You'll be able to create systems that build value in your people as well.
I'm going to bring up another question for you, Joy. Because it's interesting, right? When I was doing some research myself, right, on what's going on in the real estate industry and the application of AI, and Morgan Stanley, I think, produced in one of their reports, right, they talked about how there's like approximately 37%, right, of real estate tasks that are, they say, highly ripe for AI automation. But anyways, as I was digging into it, when you actually look at a lot of AI application today, it's about stripping away hours of administrative paperwork and manual data entry so that, let's just say, real estate professionals, for example, can focus on actual face-to-face negotiation or client relationships. And when I look at what's going on in the accounting industry, in general terms, right, is what's more valuable than spending time with your client, right? And so what are you saying, whether it's in real estate or other industries specifically, like, and do you agree, I guess, right? Just based on what you're seeing, experiencing that stripping away of administrative.
I agree that that's what it should do. I am seeing that in some instances, AI is giving people an excuse to not do the hard things. And sometimes the hard things are the putting yourself out there things. So I actually just had to have like a really hard meeting with a bunch of business development, like a bunch of BDRs, because they're spending all their time building AI agents. And I was like, pick up the phone. Like literally your job is to pick up the phone. It's important that we really do define, if AI is going to replace these things, then what? Then what are you supposed to do? Right? What skills are you supposed to gain? And that includes, yes, the face-to-face, the relationship building, going to events, going out and networking, and also enriching your own thinking, right? So spending time learning and growing and improving yourself as a professional. So depending on your field, obviously that can vary, but I think that there is a risk of being undisciplined and potentially building systems that are a little bit of a crutch. Not
Interesting.
There have been a couple studies on this as well, so I'm not alone in my thinking there. Tracy, do you want to walk us through the playbook real quick before we close out here?
Sure.
Okay. So we wanted to just introduce you all, kind of leave you with a little bit of a framework for how Duffy Kruspodin put our AI and action plan kind of together. And Tracy led out this, so I thought she could kind of present it.
So I like playbooks. And they can mean different things to different people, but if you think about it as we enter into this AI realm, right? There's foundational and structural things that need to happen, and so why not lay it out in a playbook, and then execute that playbook? And so the Duffy Kruspodin, we started this process more than a year ago, or actually almost a year ago. But anyways, there's some key elements that we need to look at as business leaders within our organization in terms of how we adopt, implement, execute different AI, evaluate, etc. And so Joy talked about elements of these kind of as we went through it. And sometimes I'll use different words, but it's the core fundamentals. And so we started by creating an AI council, which was our executive committee. And today that's going to evolve into other groups and committees. And for some of that is actually sometimes for expediency's sake and what else is going on in the organization. So with the council, we created our responsible use AI policy. And so what's interesting is I was at a conference recently and went to an AI session, and somebody asked the question, how many in the room of all the full tables have an AI responsible use policy in place? And I was actually really surprised that only half of the leaders in the room put up their hand. And so again, Joy spoke to governments, start with an AI policy. There's different levels, but it's all wrapped in that kind of governance policy bucket. So council, responsible use AI policy, and then I'm going to jump around a little bit here as it relates to skills and people. And so for me, in my experience, kind of digging into AI and working in it and leading it over the last couple of years, is it's frustrating when somebody says AI is trash. And 9 times out of 10, the reason why they might say that is because they don't know how to use it. They don't understand what it can do. And so skills and building AI literacy is, I'm just going to say, I'll say it's huge. And so here at the firm, and Joy already kind of talked to it, right, is we put in an education, and we're still building, and it's going to evolve, and maybe we're going to pivot next quarter, but we have a plan. And I'll just call it an education and literacy program that all of our employees are enrolled in, participate, and we're going to track participation as well. And so not to get into too much detail, but start with foundational understanding, but in the end, right, is you need to build the education and literacy program that works for you. And so that's really important. But then, and don't just train everybody first. So in tandem, then we are looking at pilots and use cases. And okay, so where do we implement this? And Joy talked about starting small. And I think on one of your slides, you talked about not doing too much at once, because some businesses have tried to do it all, and it's sometimes, I'm going to say not all fail, but so we have very intentionally thought about what are some of the use cases that have a broader and more immediate impact across the organization. And we started looking at them by department, for example. And so, we have product departments like our core services, right? Our tax, audit, and advisory. But then there's corporate departments too, which all of our clients have as well. And so it's very similar, but again, you got to get started. And so think about what you want to do and then just do it. And so use cases and pilots. And then, data really it wraps up everything. And so I'm going to give you an example, because I was thinking about this earlier today, is yes, there's data infrastructure, and you need to get your house in order so that AI really becomes more effective. But the one aha moment for me as a growth and marketing leader was when we created and built a number of marketing agents. And so with AI, you can find your data and put it in. And again, depending on what the data is, you do it in a more secure environment or a lockdown environment, or it can be a little looser, like writing content sometimes. But I found that I was pulling data from somewhere else and putting it in to ultimately use the platform. And so imagine how much more efficient that could be if my data was organized to begin with and I could just pull from it. And so anyways, that's one particular, it's kind of a use case, but I wanted to, it's a smaller use case, but it might help you understand the importance of data and what it can do when your house is in order. So Joy, I'm going to turn it back to you, but in the end, the framework really lots of organizations in the AI realm today speak in terms of this framework, a playbook, but it really is these core foundational elements, pillars, levers that need to be addressed in order to be more successful with AI as you go forward. I probably talked about that longer than I needed to, but
No, that was great. Well said. Yeah. And hopefully everyone leaves with kind of an understanding of perhaps in these areas, at least one or more that you could kind of consider for your own organization, ways that you could shore things up or some things that you could begin to build.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that's kind of where we'll leave off today. Like Thane said, DK is obviously here as a partner to you, and Josh and Thane and Christy, if you want to say any more on that, you feel free, but I'll just kind of leave you with the idea that the goal isn't more AI, right? The goal is not to just pile on the AI and test everything and become the guru and use AI to a saturation point. The goal is really a clear plan, understanding what your business goals are, and then understanding if and when AI is the right tool to get the job done more effectively.
Thank you, Joy.
Yeah.
Tracy, everybody for joining. If there are any questions or comments, please reach out to myself, Thane, Christy, or the DK partner that you work with. We're here for help along this way. The AI as this represent, and so thanks again, Joy, and I hope everybody has a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.